In today's video, we're gonna talk about Canon 5D Mark II DSLR camera, why this is still a great camera to buy in 2023. So guys, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe to the channel and don't forget to press the notification icon. As you already know, this camera was launched in 2009. It's almost close to 14-year-old. And when this camera was launched, it was really a revolutionary camera. There have been many Hollywood movies and many web series that have been entirely shot using this camera. Although this camera can do full HD video only up to 30 frames per second, and it also lacks continuous autofocus in the video, but despite that you can get really very great result with this camera. In today's era, even though this camera lacks some of the latest most sophisticated autofocus like eye autofocus, dual pixel autofocus, but despite that, if you rely a lot on manual focus, then you can get stunning results even with this camera. If I talk about the technical specification of this camera, I would say this camera is much more beyond the technical specification. That's why we call this a legendary camera. Even when the shutter count of this camera goes up to 1 million, still the camera keeps on working without any problem. Although this has a 21 megapixel sensor, and I would say 21 megapixel is a kind of sweet spot. It's not very high and it's not very less either. So you can get professional results even with 21 megapixel, and the low light performance of this camera is not some of the best, but it still does the job. Even in today's time, you can get great photos with this. If you combine this camera with a 50mm lens, then you can get even better results in low light situations. So the ISO range is from 100 up to 6400, which you can expand from 50 up to 25,600. So I would say it is a decent performer when it comes to low lighting, because it has a full frame sensor, so obviously it is gonna gather more light compared to a APS-C. So compared to APS-C, I would always say this would be a better choice, because right now you can get this camera body for a really nice bargain price. You can get this used for around $300 up to $250 to $300. You can find a lot of Canon 5D Mark II bodies all over the internet, and even if the shutter count is really high, still you can go for it, because this camera is built like a tank and it is gonna work even if you buy a high shutter count camera. If I talk about the build quality of the camera, it is excellent. The weight of the camera is around 850 grams and it feels really solid and good in your hands. You can see how this looks like from the front, and from the top it looks like this. It has a top LCD screen, so you can see all your settings over here. You have dedicated buttons for ISO, autofocus and different operations, and you have a top dial over here, and you also have another dial over here, so you can adjust your shutter speed and aperture on the go very easily. And it has a fixed screen, it's not a touch screen, so you will have to change all your settings using these buttons. And since this is not a touch screen and also it's not a articulating screen, so it's a bit difficult if you want to do vlogging with this camera. If you want to connect an external monitor, so it has really good connectivity options. So you have all the ports over here. So you have a HDMI, you can also connect this camera to external power source, and you have a microphone input jack. So if you want to get professional audio, so you have the option to connect a really good mic. And I would say if you want to make good video, having a good audio is much more important. Overall, it feels really good in your hand. Another unique thing about this camera is that it has a CF card, not a SD card. So this is how the card looks like, and compared to SD card, this CF card is more robust. It is made of metal and it's more durable and much more reliable. And the battery goes over here, and the battery is pretty big. If you have charged the battery fully, definitely you can get close to 900 to 1000 shots. See, pretty nice and chunky. As is the case with most of the full frame and professional camera, you do not have a flash over here. So if you want to connect a flash, you will have to buy a flash and connect it over here. You don't have a built-in flash on this camera. Now I'm going to put onto the screen some of the photos that I've taken with this camera, and I would say this camera is really good for portrait photography because it doesn't have really high frame per second, and because of that I won't advise this camera if you want to do sports photography or wildlife photography, but for portrait it will do the job. Also, this camera is not so good choice if you want to do landscape photography because the dynamic range of the camera is just close to 11 EV, which is not very high. I would say some of the camera having 14 EV would be better choice for landscape photography, but not this camera. But since this is a full frame camera, if you are using some kind of a portrait lens like a 50mm lens, which I use in most of those photos that you are seeing on your screen, you can get very nice portrait photos with nice blurry background, and also the low light performance of the camera would increase a lot. And the 50mm lens is really very sharp compared to some of the other cheaper lenses. So when it comes to photography, you can get excellent results even with this camera, or as is the case with any camera if you know what you are doing. If you need a backup camera body for your shooting in general in studio, definitely you can use this camera. But if you are a wedding photographer, I would not advise this camera because this have only one card slot, and for a wedding photographer having two card slot is much more important. If you are a beginner who want a full frame camera and you do not have very high budget to buy some of the latest mirrorless camera, then also you can go for this camera because this you can very easily get for 250 to 300 US dollar used in really good condition. Now I'm gonna put onto the screen the sample video that I've taken with this camera, and as I already told you, only drawback while recording video with this camera is that it do not have continuous autofocus. So either you have to focus manually or you fix your focus somewhere and then you start the recording, then definitely you can get good result even with this camera. Right now the audio that you are listening is directly from the built-in mic on this camera. However, you can connect an external mic as well to get a better audio. So this is the kind of video quality you can get with this camera. I'm using 40mm f2.8 STM lens. So this camera lacks continuous autofocus mode in video. So if I want to change my autofocus, let's say if I want to focus on this pillar, so then I will have to press this AF on button at the back of the camera. So then the camera will try to focus on this pillar. So right now this pillar is in focus and the background is out of focus. However, it will not continuously track a moving subject. So the focus would remain fixed over here unless I do manual focusing, or if I change my focus back, let's say to this background. Since this camera lacks a flip out screen, so you will not be able to see yourself if you want to make a video for YouTube or do vlogging. However, if you prefer to be behind the camera and you like to make cinematic video, you can get great results with this camera as well. You can see how good the video already looks. Now I'm gonna try to focus on this leaf and see what kind of background blur we can get with this camera. So you can see now the leaf is in focus and it looks stunning. The kind of background blur, the creamy bokeh with this lens, and it looks really sharp. Overall the video looks really nice. So now the final question, should you get this camera in 2023 or not? And if you want to get this camera, who are the good candidates to buy this camera? So as I already told you, if you need a backup camera, if you already have Canon lenses, you are using Canon DSLR and you need a backup camera, then you can use this camera. But I would say mostly for portrait photography, and that too in studio. Or if you are a beginner who want a really cheap full frame camera, because I would say this is one of the right now this is one of the cheapest full frame camera that you can find in the used market, then this can be an excellent choice for a beginner because you're gonna get a full frame sensor, and full frame sensor gonna give you better low light performance, more depth of field, and you can also make some really nice video. But if you are into making video, I would say this camera is more useful for those who prefer to be behind the camera. You want to make cinematic videos and you try to focus manually, then you can get great results with this camera. But if you want a camera to make videos for YouTube or do vlogging, then this is not the ideal camera for you. But If you are into photography and do some casual videography, cinematic video, then definitely you can use this camera and get great results. And since this camera also have microphone input jack, so you can get great audio as well. Alright guys, I hope you liked my review of this camera. If you liked it, please like it, share it and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to press the notification icon. Also check out some of the other videos on my channel. I will see you in a new video.